Welcome to this edition of Weather to Watch. Back in the home studio, so to speak. The audio is a lot better, I'm sure you've noticed. Let's take a look at what we should be watching. So for the next 7 days, basically, that chart behind the mild week ahead pretty much sums it up. Those are the temperature anomalies. It's going to be very warm. But we are looking at some pretty important mid-month changes. We'll take a look at the outlook for the entire month, show you if there's any snow occurring anywhere, where it is, and how much will occur, and much more. So stay tuned. We'll take a look on this Sunday late in the afternoon at the visible satellite loop. A couple of very distinctive features in the northwestern U.S. We do have a flow of moisture, pretty good one, coming in off the Pacific. We also have a lot of high clouds in the central plains. What looks to be a little weak weather system here. We'll highlight that in a minute. Let's see if the 500 millibar flow basically validates all that, and it sure does. We have winds aloft coming in pretty hot and heavy in Northern California, Oregon, and Washington. Generally a ridge of high pressure in the central U.S., but little disturbances like that one there, and a little kind of this is more of a shear zone here, not necessarily a trough of low pressure, but enough to be causing some uplift in the atmosphere. The biggest storm, the trough, that's still providing very cold air in the northeast, aloft, that's where the cold air is. The storm itself is out over the Atlantic. That will be saying goodbye to that area here slowly this week as well. At 6 o'clock Central Standard Time, we have basically a heat low there over the panhandle of Texas. Pretty warm air there, a stationary front on the edge of this cold Arctic high, which is centered over and just a little bit north of Toronto, and a front has come ashore in Portland and in the northwestern U.S. As well, with that jet stream flow I just showed you. Temperatures are very, very cold. Boston is only 17 degrees. We're looking at 3 lonely degrees there around Buffalo, and also in northern Vermont, 4 degrees, and it only gradually moderates and gets above freezing finally in the Ohio Valley here, and very mild out in the plains with 60s common in Kansas and in Oklahoma and parts of Missouri as well. Here's the radar loop. We do have that weak little rain system I was showing you on the satellite image. Very weak rains, not very heavy at all. Arkansas, but mostly now the more concentrated stuff in western parts of Tennessee and going up to the Pacific Northwest. We do have pretty good rain bands coming in Northern California, aiming at Medford right now, Salem, Portland area. And I believe that rain also is going to extend a little bit further north into Seattle, but eventually it's all going to move a little bit more inland. Let's talk about the pattern changes coming up and how that will affect not only this upcoming week, but the week after that. The EPS is showing a ridge of high pressure over the central plains on average over the next 7 days beginning tomorrow. So that is a warm pattern, and the reverse is happening on the west coast. Trough of low pressure. The trough of low pressure that brought all the cold air over the last week to 10 days is finally, the anomaly is now out over the Atlantic. So everybody can finally get warm after being cool for quite some time. And of course, when this happens, usually a trough of low pressure will indicate slightly below normal temperatures and a ridge of high pressure slightly above, or in some cases a lot above, depending on the exact nature of the flow. And certainly if you see here, this is the map I showed you at the beginning. The surface temperature anomalies are quite high here. We're talking about almost 20 degrees above normal on average over a week's time. So that's why I show this map, so it really kind of tells you the general pattern. Look how warm it is in southern Canada. Meanwhile, some evidence of that troughing out in the east, and still some remnants of that upper level low there in the middle Atlantic states. Let's take a look at 2 very specific charts. This is going way out ahead, but when they show some semblance of agreement, I do tend to show them. So this is the EPS 500 millibar. This is, again, a mean for this particular time, which is the 15th, day after Valentine's Day. So what we see is a pretty big trough of low pressure off the California coast and ridging in the central U.S. So this feature here, I want to see if I can duplicate that in the American version of this model, and it's pretty close, maybe not as deep, and this little short wave here is more evident on this map. But generally speaking, I think the trend, the setup for this coming week will be to set up this trough of low pressure for the end of this week and the beginning of next week. That's all, of course, right around the 15th or so. And I do want to show you that NIU's Severe Weather or Supercell Composite Index and Outlook for week 2 does show, that's the 15th through the 21st, does show a little bit of an uptick in probabilities of supercells there in a very spring-looking pattern. And it even doubles down even more to almost finish out the month here, where we have a pretty high probability showing up the 22nd through the 28th. And I'll throw this in here too. The government always makes a monthly weather outlook. This is February's, and temperature is what we're looking at here. So it still does show below normal readings. Of course, the first 7 days of this month were dominated by very cold air here. So that's going to weigh in very heavily on that part of the forecast. Meanwhile, warm out in the west, again, the anomalies that we're seeing now, as I just showed you, are going to kind of reverse a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see if this February temperature outlook actually holds up, because we are looking kind of a mean trough developing out here for the middle of February, and a mean ridge kind of developing out here. So that's kind of the opposite of what this is, but that's only a small slice, of course, of the entire month, which all 28 days is included in this forecast. But on the precipitation outlook, really kind of dry in the nation's midsection, coast to coast, with maybe a little bit of uptick in precipitation in the northern plains and extreme South Texas. Let's take a look at the specifics of the temperature over the next 7 days. These are the high temperatures at cities, and their departure is shown by the color. On Monday, blowtorch again with 70s from Nebraska down to Oklahoma, 80s in Texas. My hometown is Chicago, 39, but my present town for decades and decades and decades is 72 on Monday. Very, very balmy. Again, still kind of cold in the northeast, but that's wearing off. And then on Wednesday, still moderate. Not as warm in many places, but still much above normal across most of the country except the extreme west and the Great Lakes states. And then going into Friday, nothing really changes. This upper level system kind of backs in this area with rain. That's what's causing the below normal temperatures there specifically on that day. But generally speaking, if we go through Saturday through Wednesday next week, it is an above normal pattern. So this, again, represents that ridge and basically that trough that's setting up. Is there any heavy rain to look at? Let's take a look. So there isn't a whole lot of heavy rain. What is showing up as a rain hazard, this is a forecast that's made by the government every day, really, and it shows, and that color coding is not right. That's actually a slight risk. Sorry about that. There in southern Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas, and Mississippi. I need to fix that. Anyway, yeah, it's not a high risk of rain hazard there. And one of the reasons why is because the rain's totals are not that impressive. And I just started using this new map, but I think the purples are 1.5 inches to 2 inches down there in Louisiana and parts of northeast Texas. And if we go from, again, that same 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook, which starts this Saturday and goes through Wednesday of next week, we're looking at really high probabilities of rain in Nevada and California. They could use some. And in the northern plains around the Great Lakes states, and a little dry in South Texas. Is there any snow out there? Well, not much. Let's take a look at what we got. Winter weather advisories in patches of the Sierra Nevada and also Idaho and Montana, Yellowstone included in that, and winter weather advisories for a system. And I believe that's ready to expire here this evening through parts of the UP and northeast Wisconsin. The snow forecast through 6 p.m. on Wednesday does show a little bit of snow, a little bit of Great Lakes, little lake effect snow, but there are no advisories for that presently. And again, that snow that's showing up in the UP of Michigan. And then if we go further out into the future here, I did want to show you that because of this changing pattern, 22nd through the 28th, so this is the 8 to 14 day snow hazard outlook, does show that troughing really doubles down out over the west. So we're seeing a moderate risk of heavy snows through through Arizona and into New Mexico, and also Sierra Nevada, and that is a high risk embedded in there. In the Sierra Nevada for that time period. So the end of the month will end very snowy in the mountains of California, even extending up into Oregon and Washington. This area, which hasn't seen a lot of snow this year, will see more, including some of the ski areas in Colorado. And then it could be some winter precipitation setting up there in the northern plains. Remember that the severe weather during this time was showing a little bit of uptick in supercell development in this area. It makes perfect sense. What this basically defines as a trough of low pressure kind of shaped like that on average through that period, which would encourage severe storms on this end of it, snow at this end of it, and snow at the deep end of the trough as well. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.